First off, a couple of notes. I don't speak German. I wish I did speak German. I looked at the schedule yesterday and I saw all the presentations for the 2 days of this conference, and I saw one presentation was going to be in English, me. So sorry, I hope nothing's lost in the translation. And two, I did hear a lot of great ideas yesterday, some great ideas. You're going to hear a little bit of repetition in my presentation, so I hope there isn't too much repetition. I want to start off with a story. I live in a neighborhood in Portland, Oregon that is just a few steps from the forest. And in the forest, we have a lot of predators like raccoons and coyotes, and all too often you'll see signs like these on the utility poles up and down our street. Now, our street has a lot of walkers and joggers, and we also have 2 school bus stops on the street. So a lot of foot traffic, and in some cases, a lot of dwell time, a lot of people spending time around these utility poles so they see this messaging. There hasn't been any comprehensive research about the effectiveness of these signs. Nielsen or Arbitron haven't done any research, but it's my guess that these signs are very effective in getting across the message to the target audience, which is those of us who live on this street. So, in my opinion, effective because the target audience looks at the sign, the target audience cares about the sign, and in some cases, those of us who live on the street will take action because of the communication on these signs. So, these signs are very effective. Why? Clearly, it is not about the technology. The only technology that's necessary to create one of these postings, digital camera, a PC, a printer, and a stapler. So there's not much technology at all. The reason these signs work is because it's about the message. The message is very emotional. We can all share the emotional pain of the pet owner. Maybe we've lost a pet, maybe we've seen the cat, maybe we can help out. We are drawn into the message of the sign. We care about the message. And that's how you measure the effectiveness, I think, in any form of consumer communication. Emotion is key. And the audience must be compelled to engage with the message. Obviously, the target audience must be compelled to engage with the message. If the audience engages, the message works. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I started as a producer-director in Nike's internal film and video department. And our job was to create videos that highlighted Nike product, Nike strategies, Nike athletes, and sports and fitness in general. Those videos played for predominantly Nike's internal audience, the sales force and marketing people. So they would debut at Nike sales meetings. The executives at Nike liked our videos and said, why are we just limiting the exposure of these videos just to the internal Nike audience? Let's get these videos out to the consumers. So years and years ago, we started packaging up our videos, creating VHS loops, if you can remember back to VHS days, and those loops would play over and over again on monitors at retail locations, in Nike-owned stores, and also in Nike retail partner stores, such as sporting goods outlets. Technology changed and improved, as it always does, and we realized we had to get out of the old method of delivering our content and playing back our content at retail. So a little over 7 years ago, I began an effort at Nike to create a new form of distributing and playback of content at retail. And that's how we started the Nike Retail Network. We began with 4 pilot stores. The method of transmission was a combination of DSL and satellite. Those 4 pilot stores played, we sent content out on either a daily or sometimes a weekly basis to the stores, 4 different channels of content that lined up with Nike's top 4 categories from the sales standpoint: basketball, running, women's, and training. The 4-store pilot was very successful, so we quickly expanded to over 300 stores in the Nike network. About half of those stores were retail locations owned by Nike, such as Nike Town or Nike factory stores. The other half of the stores, Nike retail partners, such as, again, sporting goods dealers such as Dick's Sporting Goods and Finish Line. So 300 stores in the network, about half Nike retail partners. I resigned from Nike in June to start my own business, but for the 7 years before I resigned, I was responsible for overseeing the creative team, both the internal and external creative team, that produced the content for the network. And then I was also the day-to-day contact for execution and operation of the 300 store network. After 7 years of running the Nike network and seeing what other digital signage network operators were doing, I've come to the conclusion that digital signage networks are like snowflakes. No two are alike. Certainly from the moment it began, the Nike retail network was unique, especially from the standpoint of content. The purpose of the Nike retail network from the very first day was not to sell more product. The purpose was to enhance the brand. Our job was to make sure that the content we put on the screen enhanced the brand, improved the shopper experience in the eyes of the customers at both Nike stores and Nike retail partner stores. And that meant that we did not create, would not create, were told not to create any messaging that said 30% off or buy one, get one free. We were told do not promote product specials. We're told do not dilute the brand with our content. Nike executives also said we will not accept third-party advertising on the Nike network. Nike broadcast commercials were fine, but no third-party advertising on the network. All of this is to say it's somewhat of a unique content model that Nike has. Now, in the early days of the Nike retail network, we made two pretty important moves that I think really helped ensure the success of the program. Number one, we dedicated a team to manage the network. And I think that's a very important lesson to be learned by anyone who is running or contemplating running a network. It can be employees, it can be an ad agency, it can be a vendor group on the outside, but there needs to be a team on a day-to-day basis that's responsible for the growth and the health of the retail network. For most companies, a digital signage program is a new program. There's no established team that can naturally and logically take responsibility for digital signage. It touches so many different areas of a company, IT and retail and merchandising, sales, advertising. None of those established departments is necessarily the most logical place for the responsibility of a digital signage program to land. It's not really important which department takes over responsibility. It's important that a department takes over responsibility. Otherwise, problems will appear, and if it's nobody's job, those problems are just going to grow. Another important step we learned, the network team can't work alone. It cannot work in isolation. It has to be part of the entire company infrastructure, especially the company's communications infrastructure. If this sounds maybe a little simple and obvious, and of course I know that, but I've seen situations where the network team sits on an island by itself, and if they're not integrated in the day-to-day operations of the company, they will fail. At Nike, we made an effort to become integrated with the rest of the company very quickly. So we became integrated as fast as we could with the established brand communications groups, digital, advertising, brand design, public relations, and of course marketing. By working with those groups and meeting with them and discussing their communication strategies, what customers saw on the screens in store meshed perfectly with what customers saw on broadcast, in print, and in any other Nike communication outlet. The customers saw and heard the same thing no matter where they were looking. Usually our digital signage team followed the effort of these established teams. But there was one important exception, one program where our team led these teams on a pretty important project. A little over 2 years ago, Nike introduced a new product concept called Nike Plus. Now, maybe you've heard of it. It's a coming together of two pretty important brands in the consumer products industry, Nike and Apple. Nike provided the footwear, Apple provided the technology. You might know about it, like I say, it's become quite popular, but if not, a real quick explanation of what Nike Plus, how it works. You take a sensor and you put it in your Nike running shoe, and that sensor sends information through your iPod Nano and then to your earbuds, so that while you're working out, you are getting information about how fast you're running, how long you've been running, the number of calories you burn, all sorts of information about your workout. It even has an aspect to it that if you're starting to slow down, you can push a button on your Nano and you can play your power song, which hopefully will motivate you to pick up the pace during your workout. It's a pretty clever device. Very complex, a lot to it. A little hard to explain because there was nothing like it on the market beforehand. Again, it's become quite popular, but at the time, consumers were kind of scratching their heads saying, what is this thing all about? So the challenge to Nike in general, and especially to our digital signage team, was to create a film that showed what this device was in a very easy to understand visual way. So we had to take a pretty complex product, boil it down to an understandable film, and show that at retail. We were told, don't make a commercial, but then don't make a film that's too educational. Don't do a tutorial. Also, make sure that it hits Nike's brand aesthetic. So that was a bit of a challenge. Here's what we came up with.
Your average pace is 7:15. 2 miles to go. You completed 30 minutes, 27 seconds.
The original purpose of this film was to play at retail, and that's where this film debuted. But it quickly spread amongst Nike's brand communications group. For example, Nike's website producers found out about this film, and it began running very quickly on NikeRunning.com and NikePlus.com. Nike's public relations department found out about this film, and they took this film and distributed it around the world to television stations around the globe. We got a recording, an air check of this film taken from the Japanese equivalent of the Today Show. The Today Show, a very popular morning show in the United States. An ad agency in Australia took the footage from this film and created a commercial that ran in cinema before movies play in both New Zealand and Australia.